In this video, we're going to talk about how to add and subtract radical expressions. So, to do this, we always have to make sure that the number inside the radical is the same. So in this case, the number inside the radical is both 2. So what we do is we add together. But we have to be careful because when we add radicals, we keep the number inside the radical the same and just add the numbers on the outside of the radical. So 1 plus 1 is 2. And we're going to keep the number in the radical the same, so we have radical 2. The way we can actually think of this is almost think of this like the radical 2 is an x. So if the radical 2 is an x, it would just be 1x plus 1x would be 2x. And then you just, instead of x, we're going to put radical 2 in there. So just think of it like that, where we can't change what's inside the radical. We can only add the coefficients, which is what's outside the radical, in this case 1. So with the second example, radical 5 plus radical 5, it's not radical 10, but what it is we have to, like I said, we have to keep what's inside the radical the same. This is almost like an x, and we add what's on the outside. There's a hidden 1 in front. So 1 radical 5 plus 1 radical 5, 2 radical 5. Keep what's inside the same, add what's on the outside. Almost like if it was 1x plus 1x, once again. So this can work with variables as well. So when I have radical x and radical x, we're going to keep what's inside the radical, so we're going to keep radical x, and what's on the outside, I have 1 and 1, so 1 plus 1, 2. So 2 radical x. The next one, I have a situation where I have 2 numbers on the outside. We're just going to, like we did before, add them together. Now, it's not just 1 plus 1. This time it's 2 plus 3. But it's the same thing, and we're going to keep what's inside the radical the same. So we're going to get 5 radical 3. Now, sometimes it's not pretty, and what's inside the radical is not the same. So we can't just add them together. Radical 2 plus radical 18 is not just radical 20. But what we can do is we can change it, and we can manipulate the radical 18. We can manipulate that to get something that looks the same as radical 2. That has something underneath the radical of just 2. So if we simplify radical 18 to radical 9 times 2, the 9 can come out as a 3. So now we're left with radical 2 plus 3 radical 2. Now we can do it. So there's a 1 in front here. So 3 plus 1 equals 4. So we have 4 radical 2. For the next one, we have radical x plus radical x squared. Most people will say, oh yeah, that's just radical x cubed. It is not radical x cubed because we have to keep what's inside the radicals the same if we're going to add them together. We cannot add radicals that have different things inside. So we have to change radical x squared. The square root of x squared is x. And that's the best that we can do, because I have radical x plus x, and there's no other way for me to simplify it. So this is the best that I can do. That is my answer. For the next one, I have x radical xy plus x squared radical y. So the x squared comes out as an x. So I have x radical. Oh, whoops, I think this was supposed to be. Sorry, this was supposed to be x cubed. This is supposed to be x cubed. So, sorry about that. Alright, so I have x radical xy plus, I can bring out this. Well, I can change this to x squared times x times y, which will allow me to then take x squared out as an x. So now what I'm left with inside my radical is xy. So now I can actually add them together, because I have x radical xy and I have x radical xy. Notice that what's inside the radicals are now the same. So now we can add them. So we add what's on the outside of the radicals together. X plus x equals 2x. and then radical. We have to keep what's inside, so xy. All right. Now the next one, 18x cubed plus x radical 2x. So the 18x cubed, we can take out the 18. Well, we can change the 18 to 9 times 2. And then we can change x cubed to x squared times x. And we're going to keep our x radical 2x on the other side. So the 9 can come out. That comes out of the radical as a 3. Then I have the x squared comes out of the radical as an x. And now what's left is just 2x. And then on the other side, I still have my x, radical 2x. So now I can add these together. I just add what's on the outside, 3x and x. Let me just move this. All right, so I have 3x plus x, 4x on the outside, and I keep what's left on the inside, 2x. All right, so the next one, we have x squared y minus x squared y minus the square root of x, the square root of x squared y minus x square root of y. So this is a subtraction problem, but it works the exact same way. We have to have things that are the same in the radical or we can't do it. So I take the square root of x squared, I get x, and what's left is radical y, and I have x radical y on this side. So I have to subtract x minus x, and I keep my radical y. X minus x is just 0, so 0 radical y. 0 times anything is 0, so this one is just 0. The last one, I have y squared x minus 2y radical x. So I'm going to take out the y squared is a y, and I still have radical x inside. And then I have my subtraction. And I can't do anything here to simplify. So now we just subtract y minus 2y. Y minus 2y. You can change it to plus and negative if you'd like. And then I get negative y. So negative y, radical x. And that's it. So just the moral of the story is we have to make sure that what's inside the radical is the same. And if they are both the same, we can add them together. Sometimes you might get a situation where you have 3 different radicals, 4 different radicals, but you have to always make sure that everything inside the radicals are the same. And then you can add them together or subtract them.